Hello everybody, it's week 6 of lockdown. 6 weeks. That's the length of time we'd normally be off school in the summer holidays, except we haven't been able to go anywhere. We can't go to the beach, can't visit our grandparents or even go on a picnic. Not that we probably want to on a day like this. It's raining, it's horrible. So how are you feeling about it all? Are you really hoping this all ends soon so you can be with your friends and your wider family again? Perhaps you and your family are planning a special trip to a particular place when we're told that it's okay to go out again. Are you wanting to return to school or work? Who'd have thought it? Or perhaps you may be secretly enjoying this time at home together. Whatever it is you're feeling, I don't know about you, but I've had more conversations with different people than I've ever perhaps had in normal life, whatever normal is anymore. Those conversations happen in lots of different ways. In a Zoom room where we can see each other on our computer screens. It was so lovely seeing everybody the other day after church at home, just seeing all your faces and hearing your voices. Maybe your parents receive text messages. They may be on WhatsApp groups. You may look over their shoulder when they're looking on their Facebook feed. And of course, there's the good old telephone. When the phone rings in our house, we always have a guessing game about who it's going to be on the other end of the line. I'll say, "Oh, it's Jack," that's my son, and I joke saying, "I recognise his ring." I don't really recognise just from the ring, but my son is the only one who calls us at 11 o'clock at night. But it's not until you actually hear the voice on the other end of the phone that we can have a clue who it is. If we know that person really well, we'll immediately recognise the sound of their voice and we'll be really pleased to hear from them. Now, your parents probably don't allow you to answer the phone at home because, as well as perhaps grandma and granddad calling, or your auntie and uncle, we can also get strangers who call us. Strangers who want to sell us things, and sometimes strangers who want to trick us into giving them our money. We need to listen out and to learn to recognise the voices of those who we can trust and refuse to listen to the ones who might try to fool us. In the Bible, Jesus tells us that he will protect us from those strangers, and he uses 3 images that would have been very familiar to the people he was speaking to at the time. Jesus likens himself to a shepherd, and he calls us his sheep. Baa! Can you bar with me? Baa! And the thieves who would come and steal, kill or destroy, he likens them to scary wolves. He tells us that he is our good shepherd, one who is willing to die for his sheep. He wants to protect us at any cost, even with his life. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to one of those petting zoos, if you've been to a farm or simply a field where you've seen some sheep. If you were to shout out to them, they would scatter this way and that, trying to get away from you. However, if the zookeeper or the farmer came to them and called out to them, they would recognise his or her voice. And instead of running in the opposite direction, they would turn to that voice. They would recognise that this is the voice belonging to the one who feeds them, the one who takes them to a sheltered spot, the one who protects them, who rescues them, who finds them and brings them back home when they've wandered off and got lost, because sheep do that kind of thing. At some time in our lives, we'll all make wrong choices instead of trusting and following Jesus. Like the sheep, we easily get lost, and there's nothing that we can do to protect or save ourselves. We do bad things and choose to walk away from Jesus instead of faithfully following him. And it's then we find ourselves running into trouble. But there's good news, a way out of trouble that we find ourselves in. Instead of having to take the punishment for all the bad choices we make, Jesus did that for us. He took the punishment that we deserve in dying on the cross. Our good shepherd gave up his life for his sheep. And the best part is, he didn't just come and live all alone and grumpy and then die. He came and he lived a perfect life. He came as our shepherd. He came to lead us and teach us and keep us safe and give us everything that we need to live a good and healthy life. He came and served with his whole life. And we are happy sheep. Maa! Can you make a sheep noise again? Maa! Because our God, our shepherd, laid down his life for us. And then he picked it up again. Jesus is alive today, and he lives in us when we choose to listen to and follow him. In the Bible, John 10:3 tells us that the sheep know the shepherd's voice and follow him. Jesus wants us to learn to recognise his voice so that when, like the sheep, we wander off and get into trouble, we'll hear his voice calling to us, guiding us back to that place of safety. How can we learn to hear his voice? Well, just like any of us can learn to recognise the voices that we hear on the phone by talking to him and by listening to him. And when we chat and catch with Jesus, when we read our Bibles, when we come to church and when we do church together at home, when we ask our parents about him, when we share with each other all of the good things that he's done in our lives, that's when we learn to recognise his voice. As we know, his voice might not be the one that we can hear with our ears, but one we recognise with our hearts. If you hear a voice telling you to do something bad, that's a voice you shouldn't trust or listen to. It's like that thief that Jesus wants us to know is coming to steal, kill and destroy, the wolf. But when we feel we're being led to do something good for others, that's the voice of Jesus speaking directly into our hearts and our minds. Now, why don't we spend some time chatting and catching with Jesus? Let's just be quiet for a moment and ask him what he would like us to do today to be a blessing to others. Now you might want to press pause at this moment and just spend a little longer chatting and catching with Jesus and asking what he wants you to do today. Did you recognise his voice? I know that some of you are so good at this. Maybe get your journals out, draw a picture. Maybe it's time to make a little painting or a card to send to a neighbour, to send to your grandparents. Let's be a blessing to others and follow the Good Shepherd and live the life that he wants us to live. And that's a life to the full. I look forward to seeing you in the Zoom room for coffee and juice, maybe a biscuit or two, and I'll see you all again next week. Bye.